Hello, welcome. My name is Jan Molak. I am a software engineer, trainer, and author working with teams around the world, helping them to adopt behavior-driven development and deliver better software. Now, that's a big claim, right? So what do I mean by better software? You see, the way I look at this is that better software is software that actually matters. It matters to its users, it matters to the companies who have developed it, software that actually delivers value, software that really solves the business problems it was set out to solve, software that makes a positive impact. Now, delivering software that matters and delivering software that makes an impact is what this talk is going to be about. Specifically, what I'd like to show you is one concrete technique called impact mapping, developed by Gojko Adzik, a prominent figure in the behavior-driven development space. A technique that can help you and your team visualize where and how to best invest your time to make the biggest impact. And it can help you no matter if you're an engineer, a data scientist, or a business analyst or a product owner. It can help you if you're not a techie at all. Okay, so let's start with what is an impact? So what is an impact? How do you know if you are making an impact? How do you create something that, puts a dent in the universe? Well, before we talk about the how, let's talk about the more important question. Why? See, why is a great question to answer before embarking upon creating any new software system, new app, or starting your work on a significant milestone or even a single feature. Why are we building it? What purpose will it serve? What goal will it help us to accomplish as an organization, as a firm? So why should we focus on the impact our software makes? Is it not enough to just write some code, hope for the best, push it to production? Is that not what most companies are doing? Well, yes, you could see it this way. Unfortunately, this is exactly what many companies are doing, and probably one of the reasons why most IT projects fail. But you can do better than that. You see, as an industry over the last 2 decades, we've gotten pretty good at delivering software in general. We're reasonably efficient at it too. In fact, there's never been a better time to get into software development than it is now. See, we have stable programming languages, we have amazing frameworks with excellent documentation, and great development and automation tools. All of them available to us at little or no cost whatsoever, all of which helping us to deliver more and more features, more and more code, way faster than ever before. And that's all great, because everybody likes speed. Speed matters, efficiency matters. It's easy to impress people by going fast. But here's the thing. The trouble with going fast is that if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. And the someplace else might not necessarily be where you were hoping to be. And you would actually get there really fast. So while speed and efficiency matter, direction and effectiveness, they matter much more. So what does this mean in software delivery terms? Well, it means that in order to avoid risking, having to spend months or even years adding more and more features to software that people don't need or don't want to use, you need a clear direction towards your destination. So a clear and shared vision of the goal that you and your team are trying to accomplish, or the why, a shared understanding of how you might get there, and a good selection process to focus on things that matter the most, to focus on things that can help you make the biggest impact. Now, of course, while there is always risk of building the wrong thing, it can't be completely eliminated, understanding how to minimize this risk is critical. And that's no matter if your dream career is working at a large enterprise or building a startup. Especially that nowadays the world doesn't stand still while we build our software. So our approach to planning, prioritization, and selection, it needs to be dynamic as well. It needs to help us pivot and change course when necessary to deliver the impact that we're after. Well, okay, but you might be thinking, fine, but an impact on what? Well, not on what. There's this joke in our industry that there are only, 2 hard problems in computer science. invalidating cache and naming things. Oh, yeah, and off by one errors. But see, this is not true. A much harder problem and a much more challenging one to solve has nothing to do with software or computers at all. Instead, it has all to do with us, humans, with the way we communicate and collaborate, but more importantly, with the way we behave, being the unpredictable creatures we are. And it turns out that in order to make an impact with software, this is exactly what we need to leverage. We need to focus on influencing a change in behavior of all sorts of different people. Typically, three groups of people: people who will use our software, people who will sponsor it, and people who make it. People whose change in behavior can help us to accomplish our goal. Right, so how would we actually do that? You might be wondering. How would we go about affecting a change in behavior? And what does impact mapping have to do with it? Well, what if I told you that we've been using this mental model all along? So let's talk about impact maps, and let me show you an example. See, let's assume for a moment that we're working for a bank, for the sake of argument, and the goal of our project is to increase the adoption of mobile banking services. Perhaps we even have some high-level metrics, like, say, increase the number of mobile banking customers by 10% by the end of the year. We also understand why the goal is important. The bank says that, mobile banking users have more credit and debit usage, they make more transactions, and more importantly, they tend not to use the branches much, if at all, making it easier for the staff to support fewer customers at the physical locations. But while, of course, it's good to know what our bank is planning to measure at a high level, so the increase in the number of mobile banking customers by the end of the year, you see, there's a problem with this metric that makes it impractical to use at the project planning level. The problem with this metric is that we'll only know if we're successful or not when? By the end of the year. So that's way too late. A 1-year timescale, or even a 6 months or 3 months timescale, is typically way too long to provide us with sufficient feedback. So let's expand our impact map and see how this could be improved. So who are the actors? Who are those people whose behavior we need to affect to help increase the adoption of mobile banking in our example? Well, there's a number of them, but to keep it simple, let's focus on one particular category of users, particular category of actors, the branch-only customers. So what is the impact that we'd like to have on their behavior? How would we like for it to change? Well, to answer this question and articulate the impacts that we're trying to create, we need to add another level to our impact map, the third level, which sets the actors in the perspective of our business goal. So how would we like their behavior to change? Well, quite obviously, we'd like them, our actors, to download the app in the first place. So what do we need to do to encourage this behavior? What is that we, as a software delivery team or an organization, can actually do to encourage our branch-only customers to download the app? To answer this question, you need to think about what is really in your control. Well, we can't control the goal itself, right? We can't force the actors in any way to change their behavior and habits. We can only influence impacts by things like software features and organizational changes that we deliver. So this last level of the impact map shifts the focus to things that we can control. So what are some of those things that we can deliver in our example? Well, other than building the banking app itself, and how to build a banking app is a very good topic for another talk. But other than building the banking app, we should probably also tell our customers about it. There are different ways to do it. And since we know that the people whose behavior we want to influence are the branch-only customers that we're trying to encourage to adopt our mobile banking app, perhaps we should advertise using posters at the branches rather than online. But, Who knows? Maybe advertising online could be useful too, since it could help build brand awareness. Or maybe someone more digitally savvy will see our ad and tell our branch-only customers about it. The thing is that we can't really know for sure when we start with a project like this. But what we could do is we could put in a mechanism, a feedback loop, or in fact, multiple feedback loops to help us learn what works and what doesn't. Do you remember when I told you that goal level metrics, like increasing the number of users by the end of the year by X%, those metrics are great, but they're not particularly practical because they're difficult to track in a real-time way. Turns out that impact level metrics are the complete opposite of that. They're very easy to track. We can easily track the number of downloads, we can track the number of conversions, of clicks on our digital ad, we could even ask any new mobile customer how they've learned about our app. And see, impact maps like the one you're looking at right now are an amazing way not only to separate the outputs from the outcomes, they can also help us get an idea of how those outcomes could be measured. The things we learn about how effective we are with making the desired impact, the desired behavior change, they can influence what we want to be focusing on next. For example, if we see that digital ads fail to move the needle and help transform our branch-only customers into mobile banking adepts, we might decide to invest more in posters, or the other way around. Or try something completely different, like training in-branch staff to help install our app for our customers on their phones. The thing about impact maps is that every single link on the map represents an assumption to be proved out. See, going from right to left, there's an assumption here that delivering a certain feature or performing some activity will influence a group of people to help us progress towards our goal. The important thing to know about impact maps is that they're not shopping lists of features, as opposed to many backlogs that you'll probably see in your career. And not all the deliverables have to be delivered. And those deliverables to be delivered, they don't necessarily have to be delivered in full. For example, a poster advertising our app at a high traffic branch might be sufficient enough to move the needle of our metric significantly enough for us to stop printing other posters altogether. And because we're now measuring our impact, as soon as we learn that we've progressed towards our goal enough, we can change our priorities and focus on testing out other assumptions sooner. And we could continue to draw this map to come up with other impacts, like, for example, that we'd like our previously branch-only customers to use the mobile app more than the branch. And again, something that we can measure quite easily by monitoring the traffic our app generates versus foot traffic generated at the branches. And again, we could propose some deliverables to try and influence that behavior, like adding a feature to our banking app to support basic operations like money transfers, or providing customers with an easy authentication mechanism. Now, another interesting thing about impact maps is that they can help us to explore other categories of actors that perhaps we might have forgotten about. You see, not all the actors will help us to progress towards our goal. Some might try to hinder or obstruct our progress. So there are some actors whose certain behaviors we'd want to limit, like for the hackers to be able to guess or brute force the passwords our customers come up with. So, as you can see, impact maps can help us explore and visualize not only the actors whose behavior we might need to influence, the impact we want to make, and the deliverables we as a team can control. They can also help us spot features that could be detrimental to our product success. So let's now take a look at another example of how impact mapping might be applied. Now, this new impact map in front of us, it illustrates a milestone of an imaginary online gaming platform. The key business goal for this milestone is to increase the number of active players to 1 million by the end of the year. Now, the map highlights several important groups of actors. such as the players themselves, the development team, the PR marketing team, as well as external actors, such as the press. The map then shows how we'd like the current behavior of those actors to change. For example, the players themselves, they could help us achieve our business goal by recommending the game to their friends and inviting them to join. The reviewers of the game could help bring in more players who read their reviews, well, provided, of course, that those reviews are favorable. Those are just some of the examples, but I'm sure you get the idea. Now, once we understand the actors involved and the changes in behavior that we need to influence, we can start to think about the deliverables. So perhaps if our PR marketing team engaged with reviewers by organizing a press event, it could help to influence more favorable reviews. Now, you might be wondering, who should be drawing those impact maps? Impact mapping as a technique is a collaborative effort. It's a facilitation technique that should involve both the business sponsors and people responsible for the delivery. Now, that's because we need to make sure that any deliverables that we come up with in this process are both potentially valuable and actually deliverable. Now, with those mapped out, we can revisit the assumptions we've made. So let's explore another branch of our feature map. For example, this map shows that we believe that delivering in-game achievements for inviting friends will incentivize players to convince their friends to sign up as well. Now, when the feature or a portion of this feature gets delivered, we should track if this assumption was correct or not. Now, if the players keep using the feature and we can correlate it with the uptick in signups, we can decide to keep investing in that branch of our roadmap. On the other hand, if the players show little interest in the feature, spending more time and effort on it would be a bad investment and would indicate that we should explore working on other branches of our impact map. And again, not everything on an impact map needs to be done. If your impact level goal was for every player to invite one other player, and you managed to accomplish it with delivering in-game achievements, that's great. You don't need to work on custom avatars or semi-automated invites at all. You're done. Time to move on. And how would you know if you're progressing in the right direction? Again, you can measure the change in behavior, so the impact level metrics, those ones that are very easy to track. How many players invited their friends? How many people does a player typically invite, and so on. Those impact level indicators are something that you can use on a much shorter time scale than the goal to get to 1 million active players by the end of the year. Now, another interesting aspect of impact maps is that they can highlight the dependencies between the actors. For example, creating in-game promotional content of in-game achievements for inviting friends, it requires the development team to reduce the amount of time they spend building the core product. And you see, managing conflicting priorities is one of the main challenges of software delivery. So being able to correlate them with the measurable impacts they strive to achieve, the actors they want to influence, and the business goals they try to accomplish can help us to understand their relative value and therefore prioritize more effectively. But there's another thing about impact maps and impact mapping as a technique that I thought might be of interest to you. See, impact maps are applicable not just in the context of software delivery. The interesting thing about impact maps is that while the technique has been designed to help focus and align delivery of software projects, impact maps can be used in other contexts, like, for example, to support the causes you care about. So what are some of the causes that I care about? Well, one such cause that I personally care about is encouraging a more diverse workforce in technology. Now, you might be wondering, why do I care about it? Well, I'm a dad of 2 wonderful girls, so I have a vested interest in helping to transform our industry and make sure that everyone gets a fair chance to get into it, no matter the gender. Now, the great thing is that my goal here is in alignment with what many companies, including T. Rowe Price, who are one of the sponsors of this event, try to accomplish. Now, there are various actors who could help such companies achieve this goal, such as existing employees, but more importantly, developers to be, so students, graduates, or people changing their career path, like many of you. So, what are the impacts that a company like Theoprice would like to influence? Well, of course, the ideal impact would be for all of you to join the firm straight away and help us smash through this metric. And in order to encourage this impact, there's a number of things that Theoprice as a company is in control of and could deliver. For example, meaningful work, flexible working arrangements, or a mentoring program, or things like the TRP Code Club, which helps people new to software engineering get into coding. But I fully appreciate that joining Theoprice straight away might be a big step. So the first thing that the firm is focusing on, the first impact that it's interested in, is increasing brand awareness and encouraging you to learn about what the company has to offer. Now, this could be done by promoting the brand at conferences that care about diversity, such as this one, or setting up a booth where you can chat with the existing employees about their life at TRP. But again, doing just that wouldn't be enough. See, our map has another branch which focuses on other actors in this context, existing employees, engineers, and managers. And as you can see, there are some interesting cross-dependencies here. For example, we'd like to impact the behavior of the engineers to encourage them to mentor new hires, get them up to speed sooner, and make sure that they feel connected with the rest of the team. And there's a deliverable here like the TRP Code Club that I've already mentioned, where my colleagues can help you learn to improve or learn your coding skills. Now, there's another deliverable here of a mentoring program that can help people interested in mentoring others become better mentors and helps mentees find people they can learn from. But again, trying to influence just the developers to be and existing engineers wouldn't be enough. See, running initiatives like these, it requires impacting the behavior of the managers too. So making sure they support the mentors in their efforts, help secure time for mentoring in the delivery schedules, and encourage developers to be by creating entry-level roles on their teams. So as you can see, using impact mapping can help us to understand the actual scope of a given activity much better and helps us to identify measurable impacts much better. However, there's a number of assumptions here, right? You remember, I've already told you about it. Every link on the map, it represents an assumption. And there's a number of them here. There's an assumption here that, sending people like me to this conference might impact your behavior. And that asking my colleagues, Amy and John, to make themselves available to answer your questions about the work opportunities at Theoprice at the booth tomorrow, it might encourage you to go and meet them. Now, there's an assumption that doing all that might help Tiro move the needle on creating a more diverse workforce in technology. But all of those are just assumptions. Now, I would love for them to be true, but we won't know for sure until we have the actual data, until you help us prove it. So if you don't already have it in your calendar, please make sure to visit the Theoprice booth tomorrow between 2 and 4 p.m. Now, chat with my colleagues John and Amy and help us prove out this assumption. Now, can we make the workforce in technology more diverse? Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. If you'd like to learn more about behavior-driven development, please do check out my latest book, BDD in Action, second edition, and visit my website at janmolak.com for articles on this subject. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please do let me know. I think you can use the chat to ask any you might have. Oh, that's a great question. So one of the questions I see in the chat is, do you have a real-world example personal to you where the impact mapping has worked? Well, that's a very good question. So apart from my regular work, I also work in the open source community. I'm the author of Serenity.js, an acceptance testing framework that I developed with several contributors. So one example where impact mapping has worked is for us to help prioritize our work on Serenity.js to understand what sorts of developers, what sorts of testers we want to support, to help us prioritize the features. Because you see, when you work on open source projects, the amount of time you have that you can dedicate to those projects is very limited. It's actually very important to make sure that you focus on those things that actually make an impact, that help people learn about the framework, use the framework, and improve the way they do test automation.